Hey, Ethan. Yes, if two angles are congruent, they are exactly equal to each other because congruent means the same as equal. Hey, Ethan, probably what you're getting confused with is complementary and congruent. So, complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees, but congruent angles equal each other. You're welcome. Hey, Charlotte Ann. So, for number two, if you're looking at angle 4 and angle 6, okay?
Mm-hmm.
4 is here and 6 is here. Here are your two lines, right? And this is your transversal. So those two angles are inside, right? Okay. And if they're inside, and they're next to each other, they're right next to each other, then what kind of relationship do they have? Yes. They are consecutive interior angles. Okay, Isabel, give me just a second. Campbell 3.2 Practice A is on Google Classroom under the Classwork tab. Okay, Isabel, here's E from the activity. So if we look at this angle here and this angle here, here's our parallel lines, and here's our transversal. So those two are on opposite sides of the transversal, right? And then, so they would be alternate. Now, are they interior or exterior for the lines? Yes, they're interior because they're both inside those two parallel lines. So what do we know about the relationship for alternate interior angles? Yes, they're congruent to each other. So how will we set that equation up then? Yep, we'll set them equal to each other. So we'll have 6x plus 1 equals 2x plus 17. Okay. And then for angle y, let me erase these marks a little bit so we can see better. So for angle y, which is what we have to find, right? If we had, let's see, these two parallel lines, we can see that these two angles would be consecutive interior, right? And what do we know about consecutive interior angles? Yes, they are supplementary. That's correct. So once we find out the value of x, we can plug that into this equation and then use the fact that they're supplementary to subtract from 180, to subtract this value from 180, and that will give us y. Okay? You're welcome. Okay, Ethan, number 13 on the worksheet. Okay, so for this one, you're supposed to find the values of x and y. And we only know that this angle here is 120 degrees. So let's see how we can make a relationship between the 120 degrees and the other two angles, okay? So for 120, we can look at these and say, okay, well, with angle y, what would the relationship be between 120, between that angle and angle y? Yes, they would be congruent. So if those two are congruent, then we're going to know the measure for angle y. And then what would be the relationship between angle x and angle y? No, x and y, let's look at it, okay? Let me pull that back up. X and y would not be congruent. They are two side-by-side angles. They share a side. So that's going to make them a linear pair, right? And what do we know about linear pairs? Close. They're not complementary, they're supplementary. So yes, they do add to 180. So then you would set those two equal to 180 and solve for that value. Does that make more sense? Okay, good. Number 9 on the worksheet, Charlotte Ann. Okay, so if we look here at number 9, we are supposed to find the measure of angle 1 and angle 2, okay? So looking here, we have two parallel lines cut by transversal, okay? So what's the relationship between 75 degrees that we know and angle 1? Do we have anything that explains that relationship? Hey, Megan, you can just play around with it and leave it. You don't really have to turn it in. It just posted as an assignment, but I wanted people to be able to see it. Okay. So back to number 9, Charlotte Ann. They're not corresponding. Corresponding would be if this one was the angle we're talking about, okay? But because they would both be above the parallel line and on the left side of the transversal. But let's look at this, okay? If those two would be corresponding, so if this angle and this angle would be corresponding, what would we know then about the measure of this angle? Okay, so these two wouldn't be this angle here and this angle here. They would not be supplementary. They would be, if they're corresponding angles are congruent, okay? So if we know this one is 75 here, then we would know that this one is 75, okay? And if this one is 75, how would we figure out that one? Yeah, we could subtract those from 180 because they are, we could subtract 75 from 180 because they're a linear pair, okay? So if we said 180 minus 75, that would give us angle 1. Would that also be the relationship here for angle 2? Angle 1 and angle 2 are on the outside of your parallel lines. So they're exterior and they're on either side of the transversal. So they would be alternate exterior. So yeah, alternate exterior angles would be congruent. So whatever the measure of angle 1 is, that's also the measure of angle 2 for that one. Oh, Ethan, are you talking about on number 9? Yeah, you could absolutely solve for angle 2 first and then figure out the relationship between 2 and 1. If you see an angle that you can solve for and it's easier to solve for that one and you're not going in numerical angle order, that's totally fine. The key is to look at the location of the angles and look at your postulates that you have in the green boxes from this section. You guys can write them in your index cards. You can go ahead and get a jump start on it for the chapter, and then they'll be right there for you to look at. So you could look at it and see what the relationship between those angles are, and those postulates will tell you they're congruent or they're supplementary. Ethan, I'm glad you think it's fun. This is going to be a little more what we'll be doing the rest of the year. It'll be a little bit better than what we were doing in the first two chapters. Thanks, Ethan. I've been talking. All right. So, Charlotte Ann, what would be the relationship between this 110-degree angle and the angle 1? Yeah, they're vertical angles. And what do we know about vertical angles? Yes, they're congruent. So angle 1 would be congruent with this angle, with this 110-degree angle. Now, what about this angle 2 up here? How would we handle this angle? Do you see an angle that would be congruent with angle 2? Okay. So let's try this, okay? When you look at this picture, all right, we know that corresponding angles are congruent, right? And corresponding angles are angles that are on the same position in relation to the transversal and the parallel lines, okay? So if we have angle 110, a corresponding location for it. So let's describe where angle 110 is. It's to the left of the transversal and it's above the parallel line. So if we look up here, let's go to the left of the transversal. So that'll be on this side and above your parallel line. So that would be this angle here. Okay. So this one would also be 110. So does that help you see how you could figure out angle 2? Okay, good. And Ethan, as far as showing work for these, if you kind of mark up your picture like this, then I'll consider that showing work because I can tell that you know that these are congruent with each other and that, say, this one would be congruent with angle 2 there. Or you could say, you could just set it up and say 110 plus angle 2 equals 180, and then say angle 2 equals whatever. You don't have to show all the steps for solving that. But if I can see how you've set up your equation, then that tells me you definitely know what you're doing. Or I can see where you're going wrong. Okay, good. Okay, letter G, Isabel. Okay, so let's look at this here. For letter G, we have this angle here. Oh, that is a very fat pen. Okay, we have this angle here and this angle here, right? So basically, when we're looking at these, we have two parallel lines, right, cut by this transversal. So this is a little different than how usually when you're looking at two parallel lines cut by transversal, it looks more like this, right? So it may help. I mean, you may look silly, but it may help to just turn your head to look at the picture. So then you can see the relationship between these two angles. So you could see that they are on alternate sides, right? Here's one and here's the other. So they're on alternate sides of the transversal. And they're both inside the parallel lines, right? So they would be alternate interior angles. So what would we know about alternate interior angles? Okay, they're congruent. So how would we set that problem up then? Yep, we'll set them equal to each other. So you'll have 1/2 8b plus 20 equals 1/3 times 18b plus 6. And then the way that you solve that, remember, is you're going to distribute this fraction in, okay, to both terms there. And then you'll have a regular equation with no fractions, and it won't look so yucky, and you'll be able to solve for b that way. Hey, Evan, most of the ones that we're using are from 3.2, but sometimes they do go back from the older chapters like vertical angles. Knowing that vertical angles are congruent goes back, I think we did vertical angles in chapter 1. So this is why your index cards are important, to have them clear where you can flip back and read them all. Because you're going to be going back to these things throughout the whole year. Now, some of the older ones, you'll be going back to them so much that you'll remember them and won't have to really go back. You'll just know vertical angles are congruent, and that's the vertical angle congruence theorem. But yeah, this is going to pull from all of the chapters. But right now, these are mainly just from the 3.2 ones. You're welcome. Hey, you guys, did you see the handout that I posted on Google Classroom? It's called, it looks like this. It's the parallel lines cut by transversal poster. So one thing I would highly recommend doing is copy this in some form in your notes, your handwritten notes that you're going to be able to use on your quiz. And I would do something like this. Corresponding angles, and see how it has the dots so that you can see that that is the location of a corresponding angle. And then I would put something out there that says those are congruent. Okay. Alternate interior angles, those are congruent. And so on. I would go through and do this so that it's super simple, super fast to look into your notes and see, oh, yes, I know that. Even though it's stuff that's going to be on your index cards, sometimes having it laid out on your notes like this is going to help you be able to go through more quickly to see exactly what you need to know. Isabel, I really would like you guys to write it in your notes, because remember, actually writing it will help you remember it better too. But definitely draw the pictures. The pictures are such a help on these things. Did I miss anyone's questions with all this clicking back and forth I've been doing? Yes, Evan, I think there are only 6. There were 2 from 3.1 and then 4 that were in 3.2. And that will add to the 18 that you already have. Okay, Charlotte Ann, for number 7, Here, you know what? Let me try this a different way. Okay, for number 7, if we look at this, we have to figure out what we know about angle 1 and 2 here and this 45-degree angle. So the 45-degree angle is on the inside of your parallel lines, and it's on the left side of your transversal. So here, let's do this with you, Charlotte Ann, and see if this helps, okay? So picture this, all right? And then picture this. So basically we have 2 boxes, right? With a line going through them like this and like this. And both of them are like that, okay? Now pretend I can draw them exactly the same, but I can't do that. So if you look at this, okay, this angle on this box and this angle are the same. And then this angle and this angle are the same. This angle here and this angle here are the same. And then this angle and this angle are the same, okay? So now on our picture, oh shoot, try to make them color coordinated. On our picture, this angle and this angle are the same. This part and this part. This part and this part. And then this part here and this part here. So visually, when you're looking at this now, okay, we have this 45-degree angle down here. And if you look up at the next part of the picture, okay, at the corresponding angle for that one is the purple pink color up at the top, right? And corresponding angles, what do we know about corresponding angles? Yes, corresponding angles are congruent, okay? Also, when you look at this pink angle and this brown angle, okay, what type of angles are those? Yep, they're vertical angles. And we also know that vertical angles are congruent, right? Okay, so then we know the measure of angle 2, okay, because we can see that 45 corresponds with this with the pink angle, okay? This 45-degree angle here corresponds with this angle here, so we know the measure of angle 2 is also 45 degrees. And then angle 1 and angle 2, we can tell what relationship they have. There are 2 angles that are side by side. They share a common vertex. So what kind of angles are they? So Charlotte Ann, if the two angles for 1 and 2, if they looked like this, what kind of angles are those? Yeah, they're a linear pair. And linear pairs are, what is the relationship between them? Yep, they're a linear pair, and linear pairs we know are supplementary, okay? And supplementary angles equal 180 degrees. So if we know the measure of one of them, and we know they add together to give you 180, then we can figure out that one. Does that help? Okay, good. All right, Ethan, number 27 on the worksheet. Let me get down to it. Okay, so for 27, if we know this measure of angle 2 here, that color doesn't show up very well. Hold on. If we know angle 2 here is 50 degrees, right? And then we need to figure out the measure of angle 1. So try to cut by 2 transversals like that, okay? So if this is angle 2 here, it would be congruent with this angle, and this angle. We know that this line is parallel with this line, okay? So these angles on this transversal here, or this line, they're going to correspond with ones from this side too, okay? So we could say also this is equal, this is equal, this one, and this one. And then these two, does that help you to be able to see the relationship between them? All right, Evan, for number 5 through 10 on the worksheet. You're not necessarily going to subtract from 180, okay? It depends on what the relationship is between the angles that you're looking at. So when you look at, here, let me turn this one off. Let's look at number 10. Just because I already have that one pulled up. So for number 10, well, maybe that's not a good one because you do subtract that from 180. For number 10, we know that these two angles are vertical angles here. Hold on. Did it go away? All right, let's try again. So we know these two angles here are vertical angles. And what do we know about vertical angles? Vertical angles don't equal 180. They're congruent, okay? So that means they equal each other. So any angle that forms a vertical angle, like these two, those are going to be congruent. So angle 1 is also going to equal 110 degrees, right? And then if we look at the picture, okay, so angle 1 is 110. Angle 2, if we could find a corresponding angle for angle 2 to see if we can place it down here on this section, okay, because this is the one where we know angle measures, right? So if we can find a corresponding location for angle 2, maybe we can see where it would fall and what the measure would be for it. So angle 2 is on the right-hand side of your transversal, okay? And it's above your parallel line. So when we go down here, let's look at the right-hand side of our transversal above our parallel line. So this angle would also be the same as angle 2 because we know corresponding angles are congruent, okay? So these two would be the same measure. So now when you look at, let's see, when you look at this area down here, for this angle, those are going to add together to give you 180, right? So angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 180. Well, we know angle 1 is 110 degrees, so plus angle 2 is 180. Yeah, angle 2 would be 70. Does that help you be able to see it better? Okay, good. That's why I tell you guys, mark up your pictures, okay? Because it's really, really going to help you if you can mark them up and make notations on there to say this angle equals that angle, and to kind of see the relationship better between them rather than just looking at a black and white picture. So if you're someone who's having difficulty with this, maybe what you need to do is have a set of colored pencils on your desk, or a set of a couple different color pens or markers or something, so that you can mark up your picture a little bit and kind of make it a little easier to see. Colored pencils may be better, just in case you mark it up incorrectly, then you can undo it by erasing a little bit. But that's something that might help you. All right, so that's been an hour, guys. Does anyone have any questions? So Charlotte Ann, for number 27, angle 2 is here on your picture, right? And you need to see the measure of angle 1, which is here. So 1 and 2, if you look here, this angle has the same 2 lines as this angle, okay? So that means those two are going to be congruent. But this one here, which is angle, here, let me try this. This one here is angle 2. This one here would be congruent to angle 1. So you can see if they look like that, then they're going to add to 180. They're going to be supplementary because they make a straight line. They make a straight angle, okay? Isabel, yeah, we'll check this worksheet in class tomorrow and we can talk about it too. All right. Any other questions, you guys? You good? Okay, Evan, some problems do have the same answer for both angles. Number 6 is not one of them, though. Here, I'll pull that up real quick and I'll show you, okay? Well, I'll try to. Okay, you see it, Evan, or do you need me to help you? Okay, no worries. All right, guys, if you're good, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. If you have more questions while you're working on it, go ahead and email me, okay? I'll be around this afternoon. All right, see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.